We've got a schedule in there that shows you the implementation dates, routes, and start dates, and that's a tri-fold item and just kind of gives you a feel for how we phased in our service. Another is a little one-pager on new routes that we're going to be putting into effect in this calendar year, 07. And the last item is one that we're real proud of, and that's our boardings for from December 05 to December 06 by route. That kind of give you a feel. You can see we've got a million boardings in about a 2-year period, and that's pretty good. That's a lot of service and a lot of congestion relief. Some cost information, a couple questions came up about that, and I wanted to correct a number that we put out there. The total dollar figure for running Express in FY06 was $4.2 million. That's not in the handouts. I'll be glad to put that in a writing for you all if you'd like. That is a contract hourly cost of about $44.6, and that's pretty good. That's fuel cost and the private contractor who operates our express service. But I hope that is responsive to y'all's questions. And yes, sir. Oh, $44.6 per hour, revenue hour. That's hour of service to operate all that Greta service. That's $4 million. But I'll be glad to respond to any other questions you might have, and might have to get back to you, but wanted to make sure we provide you with that information. I'll sure get back to him. Okay. And Mr. In 08 budget is that's actually that service that's the operating cost for the agency. It's about $4 million general revenue dollars. The cost of providing the express service is actually a county operation, and Mr. Stansel explained to you all last time that we put in an arterial roads program through state revenue bonds, and arterial roads, $10 for every $1 that counties put up. So we're running that off of what's called CMAQ money. That's congestion mitigation, air quality, federal dollars, and a combination of that and county dollars. The counties put up $1 and they got $10 back for arterial roads about 2 years ago. So it's been a good deal in service, and counties, everybody's happy. And our patrons are very happy. Our biggest complaint, as Steve told you, is folks want more service out there on the street. And we have with us today Cheryl King, who is the Executive Director of the Transit Planning Board. And Cheryl's going to talk about an appropriation item that is coming forth from that group, and tell you a little bit about as well what the Transit Planning Board is doing. Yeah. Yes, sir. Correct. For express operations? Is that what you... Yeah, that's the operations for the agency itself, staffing. Oh, no, it's flat line. Okay. And Cheryl King. 8 months?
Yeah, well, not 8 months, more like 6. All right, thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. My name is Cheryl King. I'm the Staff Director for the Transit Planning Board. I don't know if any of you have heard of us, but we were created by a joint resolution between Greta, MARTA, and the ARC to help provide a forum for our region to talk about our transit issues and how we're going to deal with them. And one of our products is going to be a program of projects that will be prioritized in terms of transit, what our region needs. In the short term, we're working with the different operators, CCT, Gwinnett, Clayton, as well as MARTA and Greta, and the other operators to try to figure out how we can operate more effectively to provide more service to people efficiently in the region. Should I go into our request? Or?
Yeah, why don't you tell us about your past and where you came from and your expertise? That would be...
I'm a professional planner by training. I've worked on staff for the Dallas Area Rapid Transit Authority. I was the Director for Community Relations there for DART. I've also worked on staff for the Metropolitan Transit Authority of Houston, Harris County, Houston, Texas, where I was a planner in their planning not only service but facilities, as well as doing environmental documents for the different bus facilities, bus garages, they have a big system of HOVs on which they run buses, and I guess new term would be BRTs. We call them transit ways back when I was there. I've spent a lot of my career on the consultant side, working for various firms. I've worked on projects across the country, transit projects in LA and San Diego, Baltimore, Florida, a lot of stuff in Texas. I've been here in the Atlanta area about 5 years. Prior to coming to the TPB, I was with the Wilbur Smith Associates, where I was the lead person for their transit planning practice. Glad to be on board here. I did my graduate work, my planning degree, and this is probably heresy to say this in Georgia, but I did my planning degree at Ohio State University, and I have a undergraduate degree from Cornell College in Mount Vernon, Iowa. And I've been in this business about 30 years.
Tell us what you do as far as coordinating, how you coordinate all the transit. You work with MARTA as well?
Yes, sir. We work with all of the transit agencies. Like I said, we were created by MARTA, Greta, and ARC, and we're jointly funded by the 3 agencies. So we work with them on the daily basis. There's some days I'm at ARC in the morning, I'm at MARTA during lunch, and I'm back at Greta during the end of the day. We also work with the operators, the TMAs, the CIDs, and our main purpose is, again, to try to get everybody to work together to provide a forum for us to sit down and talk about the transit issues and to figure out how we can, again, use our existing facilities and services more efficiently and to provide better customer service for people using transit in the whole region. Right now, because there's so many different operators, people often get confused as, well, how do I go here? Who do I call? How do I get this information? And we've also noticed, because of some of the policies that are in place, it makes it difficult for people to travel around the entire region. It may be easy for me to get around Atlanta on MARTA, but if I'm in Atlanta and I need to go to Cobb County, sometimes I run into problems because I don't understand the fares, or I'm confused about where the CCT buses go. So one of our jobs is to try to get everybody to the table and talking and figuring out how we can work together. We're embarking on several things. One which is very critical, and this is the whole concept of providing paratransit, the service for the elderly, the handicapped. How can we do that more efficiently? It's a very expensive service to provide, and everybody's struggling with trying to provide enough of it. As you know, we baby boomers are getting older, and our parents are getting older, and they need help with their mobility issues. And so paratransit service is very popular. It's very much in demand. And because it's so expensive to offer, we're trying to figure out how we as a region can come together to provide the level of service that's needed and to do it cost efficiently and make it convenient for the people who need to use it.
Anybody have any questions for him? How about trains? We're not big on the train issue. We talked about trains. What's your expertise in trains?
Well, I spent a lot of my career working on various transit projects that involve trains and buses. While I was out in L.A., I worked on the environmental document for their subway system there, the red line from downtown out to Wilshire, Alvarado. In Texas, I worked on a lot of the Dallas area rapid transit light rail line, doing the planning and public involvement for those particular projects. I also was the planning manager for that Baltimore light rail line that goes from downtown up to Baltimore County. I've worked on a lot of the stuff down in I-Drive, down in Orlando. Spent time in Houston. I did work on the light rail line that they now have in operation. Done some commuter rail study, stuff for different clients around the country. While I was at Wilbur Smith, we completed an environmental document for a downtown bus transfer center that they want to do, and worked on some long-range planning for transit systems that would include not only trains but buses as well as all modes, and how they come together to provide a system for a particular region or area.
Have you seen any of the plans we have around here on trains?
Yes, we have. Yes, I have, sir.
You work with GDOT. Have you seen all their plans we've done in the past?
I haven't seen all of them, but I'm aware of them, and I know that they have some plans for commuter rail and other things as well. I don't know.
Have you worked with GDOT at all since you've been in this?
Yes, we've been in contact. I've spoken with Gerald and tried to keep him involved and let him know what we're doing as the TPB.
Okay.
And again, they're one of our partners, although they're not one of our funding partners. We do want to keep them in the loop and let them know what we're doing,
right,
and the work that how it will dovetail with their plans.
Any questions from anybody? Okay, thank you for being here.
Thank you for the
If you got
time.
some cards, we probably need to
Yes.
hand out some if you've got some.
Okay.
If you'll give them to Rob Rogers over here, he'll hand them out.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Chairman.
you. Thank you, John.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Okay, DOT.
Morning, Mr. Chairman.
Morning. Go ahead, buddy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the members that are here, DOT staff went by your office Monday and updated the books that we gave each one of you with questions and concerns. Several of the items that were asked about project cost and what was planned for those costs and then completion dates were included, as well as follow-up information about our facilities. There was a question about square footage costs on what we're paying for our facilities, and we had a summary sheet at the back of tab 5 in that book that basically shows you of 20-something facilities that we built in the last 2.5 years. We're paying for roughly a cost of $100 a square foot for those facilities. So, and with that, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to go ahead and begin with our proposed 08 budget. Turning to page 2, the anticipated revenue for the department from mineral fuel collections will be roughly $922 million. And what the department and the governor's budget shows requesting is the first item is the debt service, bond debt service for Fast Forward and part of GRIP will be increased from 07. We're requesting $169 million for paying back that debt service for this particular year. The GRB bonds for Fast Forward, which we paid roughly $47 million, we're asking for about $1 million increase to go to about $48 million. And then general operation budget, we're asking for an increase of $28 million to go from $281 to $309. Those increases are mainly due to the 3% pay increase for 08 that's proposed, health insurance increases, worker comp increases, as well as rental rate increases. And then looking at the for matching federal funds, we're asking for $289 million. And then LARP, we're asking for $60 million, a reduction of about $8 million from 07. And then off-system state fund construction, asking for $27 million, a $7 million reduction from 07. And then the most needed, approximately $21 million. And that will make up roughly the $923 million of anticipated motor fuel collections. On page 3, I know the off-system work is near and dear to everybody's heart. Kind of shows a history graph of what we have spent for LARP off-system and most needed as far back as 2003. Even though there is a slight reduction, you can see prior to 2006 we've had a tremendous increase in off-system assistance. On page 4, it kind of breaks up those items that we anticipate spending that middle fuel collection on by percentage of what we went over on page 2. Roughly 12% is for off-system. Matching federal funds is roughly 31%. And the debt service is roughly 23%. And then general operations accounts for about a third of our budget. As far as general fund requests, if on page 5, you will see intermodal salaries and operating funds for 6 positions, freight rail salaries and operating funds for 4 positions, and then ports and waterway, $647,000 for that, and then air transportation of $3 million. Looking at the intermodal salaries and freight rail salaries, these are for the individuals that deal with our transit program around the state, not only for planning them and working with the same agencies that we heard from the previous speaker, but also working with the programs that we've got in urbanized Atlanta, working with Marta and Greta Gwinnett, we transfer funds to those agencies to help pay for buses and some operating expenses. Also, for the rural programs, which most of you are familiar with, van programs that we've got, we roughly help assist with 390 vehicles and 103 programs. And then from the rail side, the 540 miles that the DOT owns and operates and leases to short lines to work that group and that agency. And then the $3 million is something that the governor is looking toward reevaluating the whole aviation program for the state government. You got several agencies that have different planes and helicopters, and he's looking at ways to make that whole group more efficient statewide. Buying planes that are consistent, helicopters are consistent, and looking at consolidation of that type operation. And then lastly, we're asking also to allow us to sell GEO bonds, $70 million worth of GEO bonds for the Fast Forward program on page 6, as well as selling GEO bonds for ports and waterway maintenance facilities for the Savannah River and Brunswick. And that real briefly sums up the budget request for 08.
On page 2, why are you asking for a reduction in the law program?
That's just what was proposed by the governor. He felt like we have so many needs on system that it was time. I kind of went over that a little bit in the 07 budget presentation, and so did Commissioner Lincall, that we kind of let our system over the last several years decrease. So we're trying to put some of that money back on system work.
It's just a very important program to us, and we agree.
We agree.
One, you mentioned $3 million on the governor's airport aviation task force.
Yes, sir.
That's only talking about the state fleet? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, sir. State fleet department is pretty much has the majority of the aircraft in this state, but there's a lot of other state agencies that have aircraft as well, and there were several recommendations made by a task force to look at consolidation, to look at the type of aircraft we're buying to be consistent and how we maintain that fleet statewide.
Who is the task force? Who are they?
You know, I'm going to have to defer to Earl for that question. I'm not real sure who was on the task force for the governor.
It was primarily private sector people.
Sorry about that, sir.
Yeah, got to be on the internet, Earl.
Primarily private sector people in the aviation industry, and it was led by, I think, the people at Southern Bell, among others. And they went ahead, it was part of the Commission for New Georgia, one of their initiatives to take a look at it. So it was probably about a 6 or 8 month study, and they finally made the recommendations.
They've made the recommendations?
Well, I think they have a proposal that they've reported out on.
Can we get that?
Yeah, can we get a
copy of that?
Well, I'm not sure we have a copy, but I think they've submitted a draft of their proposal.
to the governor?
We can track it down for you.
Yeah, since we don't know anything about it, it'd be nice to know. Earl, what airplanes do y'all not control?
We don't control the airplanes for the tech schools or colleges. We don't do it for the people at natural resources or forestry.
That's just a helicopter, right?
Well, yeah, a helicopter for the most part, but Georgia State Police,
Patrol.
GPS patrol. So, there's about half a dozen agencies, and there's a lot more aircraft out there, both fixed wings and rotary, the helicopters. Right. And as a result, technically in code, GDOT is responsible for approving in the maintenance and the operation of them. However, I think there's a conflicting code where DOS has to make a procurement of all the equipment.
Okay.
Light comes on and off. While you're there, what kind of shape are the aircraft in? I mean, I know you know more about your aircraft than anybody's, but what kind of service is DOT?
Well, I think some of the aircraft is in a lot lesser condition ours are in, and I think there's been some issues with some of the acquisitions in the past where we've bought equipment and it's cost a lot of money. It was a good deal up front, but to make sure we kept our what called airworthiness, we've had to do a lot of upgrades in it, and it probably was not the most efficient. So there are some aircraft that needs to be sold out because they are old and they're obsolete to really state use currently.
I can do a follow-up. That was my next question. What age are these aircraft at DOT?
Ranging anywhere from a couple years old all the way to some of the aircraft being close to 3 decades old.
And the majority on the 3 decades old.
Yeah, I think we had the newest fleet. I think most all of our aircraft, except for 2, are within 5 years, and most of them are just going off the original 5-year warranty, from the manufacturer.
So you'll put that out for bid?
Yes, sir.
Buddy, on the page 5, the talking about the intermodal and the freight and the ports.
Yes, sir.
Not so much the ports, but the first 2.
Right.
How many people do we have in those positions now? Are these new? Or?
No, those are existing positions, and this is a program. All the programs I mentioned have been ongoing. These positions, and I know Representative Davis is not here today, but none of these positions are dedicated toward Lovejoy or any particular line or intermodal program that's specific.
So, like that first one, you're asking for 6 positions, and there's nobody there now?
No, they're there now, and they're funded through normal appropriations. Last year, they didn't get appropriated because of the issues that we just discussed, thinking that those positions were tied into that particular line. These positions can't be funded with federal funds is the problem, and we basically had to make do with what we had and work with Federal Highway, but they're not willing to do that anymore.
I got a question for Earl. I guess my question back to you is, as far as the Air Transportation Aviation Task Force, is it known? Okay. Concerning our state patrol, I mean, we're talking about consolidating every single state agency as far as the aircraft go and putting them under one division. Is that your understanding? I mean, I got some concerns about our state patrol ending up as far as their access to aircraft whenever there's an emergency or whatever.
And all that was taken into account. The intent is to ensure that each agency that has a need for aviation will end up making sure that their mission is still covered, and it may not be a direct control. It may be an indirect basis where, in terms of maintaining the fleet, making fleet decisions for cost-effective utilization of the equipment, that would be done on a more global basis. We still have the ability for each agency to meet their mission. I don't see that changing any.
Okay.
And again, the study isn't actually out and it has not been published. It's in the midst of being finalized at this point. So, it is in draft stage to the best of my knowledge.
Yeah, that's a question. So what we're saying is this $3 million in there is to study the report that's coming out?
No, it's actually to do the first phase implementation of the study or report, whatever you want to call it.
And do we know when we're going to possibly get a look at that? I mean, I know a while ago you said you'd try to run it down, but now you're saying it's...
it was independent of DOT and the other agencies, right. Even though we supplied the resources and answered all the questions, and also, again, I'm comfortable that we'll ask the right parties that you all would like to have a copy, and we'll do our very best to get you a copy.
Yeah, that's good job. Thank you.
You said you're going to try to get us a copy.
We'll make the request to get a copy so we can get it distributed to this committee.
You do understand that this committee is going to make the recommendation where you get the money or not, so wouldn't it be advisable that you get us a copy rather than to tell somebody they need to?
We will do the best we can to get the copy of that study to you, sir, by the end of the week.
Earl, do you still have the old jet out there? I think it was a Citation.
We actually upgraded that one Citation, and we moved from about 27 years out to about a 22-year-old aircraft. And really what took place is we could not get the old jet Citation airworthy, and so we went ahead and sold it. I think you may be aware last year about this time it was sold on eBay, and it was actually sold for more than its going book value, if you can believe it. And we invested some of that money in another Citation that was at the school at Eastman, and that's the jet we're currently using for the department.
So the replacement went to Eastman.
No, we took their jet,
Oh.
and it's our replacement.
Okay. And then that Eastman school is going to be transferred to the Regents, I understand.
That's what I understand, yes, sir.
Anybody else have any questions? Representative Houston, you want to come up here and sit with us since you're the secretary? You sit up here in the back row. Buddy, the general operations is jumping from $281 million to another $28 million.
Yes, sir.
I know you briefly talked about it. Explain to us again why it's jumping another $28 million.
All right. $3 million of it was to cover the 07 remainder of the 07 pay increase. $5.5 million was for the fiscal year 08 first half, 3% raise, and then health insurance increases for the rest of 07 and fiscal year 08 was estimated to be approximately $14 million. Increase in workers' comp was $4.2 million, and then rental increases was right around $600,000. And that came up to $28 million.
And what was $14 million?
That was for the health insurance increases for 07 and 08.
Okay.
The last half of 07, the first half of 08.
And how many employees do we have in GDOT?
Approximately 5,700.
5,700. Okay. The off-system state fund construction, you're showing a $7 million cut.
Yes, sir.
Can you explain to the committee, I guess that's the governor's recommendation, correct?
That is correct.
Can you tell me why?
Well, I think going back to what I stated earlier, the governor wanted to put some more money back into the on-system needs, and if you go over how that money is going to be spent, the debt service for both the bond sales is basically, you have to do it. The general operations, the $309 million, is pretty straightforward, as well as the federal match. So really the money just wasn't there to have it at the level that we had it.
Okay. How about the next line, the most needed? You're cutting it $2.2 million?
Yes, sir. Again, just to get within that that anticipated revenue, the $922 million.
Okay. Representative O'Neill, do you have any questions?
No, sir. I'm quite caught up in. I appreciate you answering.
Let's kind of digest this a little bit, buddy. And
Sure, no problem.
I'm sure there's some other questions.
Deputy Commissioner, let me ask you a question. Is there a difference in what y'all asked for and what the governor recommended?
On this particular budget, we did ask for some transit as far as the rail line improvements for our short lines. That wasn't included in his budget. I want to say it was close to $14 million. 12.8. Thank you, Angela.
There was $12.8 million that you asked for. Okay, that you asked for that they didn't include. I mean, did you try to look at maybe asking for that, or the $7 million for the off system and all, to try to keep it in?
I'm sorry, Representative Roberts. Right.
I'm sorry, I was looking back here real quick. The $7 million cut that you took for the off system, did you try to ask for that money in the budget?
In the budget, we try to match what we had from the previous year, and that it basically was lowered back down to this amount.
Okay, so you asked for that, and the governor lowered it now.
That's what I remember. Is that a correct statement, Angie? Sorry, go ahead.
If you don't mind me making a comment.
Sure, go ahead.
Since motor fuel is a limited commodity and there's only X amount of dollars, that is actually the dollars we had to work with. What we had to do, we had to go ahead and do all those adjustments. Remember the $28 million that Buddy had just mentioned a couple of minutes ago? And that deducts the 7.9, the 7 million, and 2.2 million in those three respective areas in state-funded motor fuel, and this is only motor fuel, had to come out of the total amount of money we had. So we had to reduce it out of here because we do not get general funds for these activities. So we would not normally have asked for that money. So the governor didn't really cut anything out here. What will happen, just like a couple weeks ago with the amended budget, we will have some receipts, we hope, over the collections, the estimate, and we would probably then look at all these programs and adjust them like we did in the 07 amended budget we presented to you a week and a half ago.
Thank you,
Earl, when you mention motor fuel, you're talking about state motor fuel and not federal motor fuel.
Correct.
Okay. Point of clarification.
I know this question was asked about the LARP money. Did y'all recommend cutting it?
No, going back to what Earl just said, if you look at the final dollar amount, the $922 million, that's what we expect to generate from the state motor fuel revenue. Okay, if you look at the first four line items, those are items that we cannot control as far as paying back bond, our general operation, and as far as our match and anticipated match from federal funds. So all we had to work with was roughly that $111 million. So how that fluctuates with that $111 million is what was established by the governor.
You got to get a little simpler with me now. You're
Okay.
going over my head. Throwing some figures at me, and the question basically is $7,900,000 being reduced from the LARP program.
Correct.
Okay. So will we have $7,900,000 less in the LARP program this year?
That is correct.
The coming year.
Do we need more, or is our LARP program not working, or we don't need that much?
Well, like Ms. Moffett just said earlier, we're anticipating in the 08 supplemental next year, we'll come to you, and hopefully our receipts will be higher, and that will be something that we'll come to you and ask you to increase between that and, like we recommended in 07, for our own on-system state route work as well.
But this budget is cutting LARP by $7.9 million.
Again, we anticipate $923 million of revenue.
You're going over here now.
No, at the very the bottom right.
Simple.
Okay, real simple is we have about $111 million, $107 million to actually play with between LARP, off-system, most needed, or even on-system work. Okay, because the first four items, the paying back the bond service, we don't have a choice. We have to pay back bond debt. Okay, for both the $169 million and the $48 million. And the general operation of $310 million is how the department operates on a daily basis, paying personal services and supplies and materials for our maintenance operation. And then the matching federal motor fuel funds, the $289 million, going toward matching the federal dollars that we get from the federal gas tax. So those items really we have no control over that are there. Okay, so from our anticipated $923 million, taking away those first four items that we really can't control, there's about $107 million that can be moved in different programs, state funded.
Well, you've done a great job with the LARP program, and I just don't want to see it cut. I think it's important to us.
Well, a lot of the stuff that we do with the LARP program can also be done with off-system and most needed.
I understand. I was a little bit late, but I understand you said that running gravel is about $41 an hour.
Oh, that wasn't us. That was this gentleman over here.
Okay. All right. That's all I need, Mr. Chairman.
Buddy, on page 11, line 46.52, tell me what that is. You don't have it? Okay.
What's that number, Michelle?
46.5.2, page 11 of 12.
That's just mainly all
He's trying to keep
Chairman O'Neill,
You're talking about the 100,000, sir? That was a one-time from last year's budget, and that we actually, that was 100,000 was put toward economic tourism up in northeast Georgia, and it was a one-time line item in last year's budget.
technical assistance? What
No. Basically, like tourism, signage to attract tourism in northeast Georgia for various locations. That's about all I know, to be honest with you, sir. But it was a one-time line item from last year's budget.
I don't remember that. That's the reason I was questioning it. So, okay.
Angela just told me it was added by conference committee.
Oh, okay. That's the reason I didn't know about it then. Okay. What number are you, Chairman, on?
Number 11. Thank you. Appreciate you recognizing me. Mr. Commissioner, I heard from some folks in the Chatham County area that there was a joint, I guess I'll call it a program between Georgia Economic Development people and GDOT that had to do with a huge job creation thing with a company called Gulfstream down there.
Yes, sir.
And I'm being told that we actually had an agreement with these folks that the state signed binding themselves to do certain things, part of which was a good amount of infrastructure, roads and bridges and highways. And I'm now being told that we will be opening a factory down there that the folks can't even get to because we haven't gotten our part of the agreement done for the Gulfstream. But could you tell us if there's any truth in that allegation or accusation?
Well, we've been working with Gulfstream in Chatham County and the city of Savannah on those improvements, and just like everything else, the price and the scope of services or scope of work that they've requested initially has changed over the course of Gulfstream coming in. So we've been working with them. We've committed $5 million, and I think they're wanting an extra couple million. We're trying to work through that issue right now with them. So, and I'll get you a complete update by the end of the day on that issue. But we are working with them, and we're committed to $5 million, and it was something the governor committed to when he went down there when he announced the Gulfstream expansion, and certainly we're going to honor that commitment.
Anybody else have any questions? Buddy, I've got one that's, really doesn't deal with the document. I know we're continuing litigation with contractors, and I usually get a list of that each year. So I don't know if Earl does that or your attorney does it, but I know y'all settled a case that I was halfway involved with the other day, which I was glad to hear, but I wasn't excited about the settlement. But
yes, sir.
Can you bring us up to date or give us information on that? I know.
Well, that particular case was settled for, I think, a little bit over $500,000.
Mm-hmm.
And as far as I know, I think we've got 2 more outstanding cases, and I'll have to get the particulars for that. And then also we have the issue from a contractual standpoint with a contractor in South Georgia for a number of jobs that we hear complaints about not being completed on time and delayed.
Okay.
And I can get you an update on that particular issue as well.
Also, I was going to ask about contracts. I've never had the privilege of looking at any of your contracts. That I assume y'all have more than one contract you use when you bid a job.
We have different
road contractor, subcontractors.
we have different contracts for whether it's federally following the federal processes versus a state process. We also have different contracts for professional services and non-professional services, like for hiring an engineer or hiring a non-professional individual that may be doing some soil drilling for us, that sort, like an operation or maintenance and mowing contract. So we have various type of contracts in the department we follow.
How many do you have?
I wouldn't even want to throw a number out there. It's several hundreds and thousands. Yeah.
Several hundred or
no thousands? Thousands. I mean, if you look at DOT contracts, it's probably in the range of $350 to $450 a year. Then you add up all the different service contracts.
I'm just talking about the contract forms you use.
No, it's probably closer to 5 or 6.
Can I get copies of those?
Sure.
Okay. I'd like to get some of the other committee members may want it too. I don't know. May not have anything else to do, so if I could get a copy of that, and also copies of litigation costs and who you're in litigation with right now.
Yes, sir.
And let's see, what else was I going to ask? Oh, talking about the bill that's in transportation right now, I noticed that on the utility side, I think it's utility side, we're talking about mediation.
Yes,
and
sir.
Not, anything where if someone has to file a claim. I guess in the past you've had to file, a utility contractor had to file a claim against you or a lawsuit against you, or you had to do the same thing.
Well, actually, what the utility bill is different than what we're trying to work out with the contracting industry. We're also working toward mediation with the contracting industry as well. The utility bill that you're referencing is basically a bill that's with your secretary right now and his committee that will enable the department, first of all, label the department to pay for certain utility relocations, publicly owned or privately owned utilities on a DOT job where the job is going from, like, say, like a 2-lane rural to a 4 or 5-lane divided urbanized section where you've got a lot of utility coordination. What's happened in the past is because we haven't had those utilities included in our contracts, there's a lot of finger pointing at the end of the job. The job gets delayed a year and a half, cost DOT money because we have to pay our contractor for those delays to maintain erosion control, maintain traffic control, and that type of thing. Also, the public is suffering with those year and a half delays. So this will enable the department and the contractor to go to a utility company and say, okay, you're responsible. Here's our side of the story, and they'll have an opportunity to respond and go through a mediation procedure, non-binding, that will enable them to tell their side of the story.
Well, it's non-binding.
It's non-binding, yes, sir. And then after that point, if the parties don't agree and they can't come to some resolution, then you would have to follow the normal court process. But certainly from our perspective or the contractors, that hadn't been very successful because there's always a lot of finger pointing going on.
Okay. The other question I was going to ask about that, and I think the meeting's today at 4:30, Chairman Smith? Do you have a deal? Do you have a transportation?
3 o'clock.
3 o'clock. Okay.
6:06.
6:06. Okay. One of the things in the language it talks about it has to be ratified by a court, Fulton County Court, and with 49 judicial circuits in the state. And you could have, you got contracts all over the state. Why were you using just one court and not utilizing the other 49 judicial?
Because that's where our contract is originating from, that they sign. It's from a Fulton County jurisdiction.
Okay.
And we can talk to you later about that if you'd like.
That was a concern I had. So. Okay. Anybody else? You can.
Yeah, I got a question. And I may be wrong. I was just going down this list of the. I appreciate the info you put in that book. I've been talking a lot about facilities. I'm in that tab 5.
Yes, sir.
Where it's got the square foot talk. And I see we've got 22 different type of buildings that we're putting up. Some maintenance, and I know some old district offices. Of those 22, everything was higher than the low bid except 2 projects. What do we do? Look at the kind of the whole scope of that thing? How does that?
Well, they bid a price, but we still have to pay price to Jix Fix and other issues, permits, and everything else that goes in that final construction cost, other than that bid amount.
Okay. I was just looking at number 15 and number 17. They were the only two that were lower than.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and also, like Earl just said, we do have change orders that actually reduce the scope of work. Once we get out there, we decide something's not needed or there's an issue that saves us money. So that's how you get a lower amount from the final construction cost.
I was going down that list. I'll probably come back.
Anybody else? Okay. Yeah.
But one more question, following up with Chairman Smith. You know, in Ben Hill County and Fitzgerald, y'all done a great thing when y'all come in there and took that old funeral home that was actually a relatively new building and made it into your headquarters there, and I think it was a great move, not only for the local community, but for y'all as well. Do y'all try to do that as much as possible?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, we've moved into several, and actually one on the replacement list is something we took over from GSP several years ago that just can't be renovated anymore. We've actually have moved. Let's just say we have a project goes in and takes a metal building maintenance type operation. We've actually, when we bought that through our right-of-way acquisition process, we would relocate those buildings and utilize them for DOT forces. Up in northeast Georgia and Gainesville area, we do a lot of that, and we've done it around the state. And again, in Metro Atlanta, the district engineers, the district office, it's about to be completely renovated, and we've got the district personnel actually housed at the old archives building. So we look at all that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Further question, Buddy, the item 46.2.2 on page 11 of 12, delete one-time funding for aircraft inspections of $92,000. I assume you have enough money in the 07 to do the aircraft inspections, or?
Go ahead and say, I'm not even going to try to be the mediator on that one.
Whenever we have that money added, we had it specifically added in the previous budget year, and we did the inspections in a certain type of hot wing inspection. We're not required to do them again, so we're just deducting it because we don't need to do the inspections until the next interval time. So
when you talk about general time, you're talking about engine time? Is that what you're talking
It's all based on flight hours, yes, sir. So in other words, yes, sir. So we went ahead and did the inspection. We added the money in that budget year, and since the reinspection will not come up in this budget year, it's being reduced out or taken out.
Basically, you do it every other year. Then.
Well, it's based on hours, but it falls more like every other year, a little longer than that.
How many hours are you talking about? Like on a helicopter, I know they have to be inspected.
Well, there's a whole list of different type of inspections, and some come at, the 1,000-hour interval, and some come at 5,000 and 10,000. So as you go up the ladder in terms of flight hours, the more sophisticated and the more costly those inspections. And the hot sections actually mandate that we take apart part of the engine, inspect because they're turboprops, inspect the blades and everything and replace them. And that's what we got into last year was we had to do the hot section requiring to take apart the turbos and also to replace all the fan blades.
Okay. So we're on course as far as safety. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay, if there's no one else needs to say anything or ask anything. Anybody? Okay, thank y'all.
Thank you.
Good job.